Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you very much for staying till the end. I'd like to just introduce myself and then also introduce our panel. My name is Thiri Thanmun. I am the country representative for the CDC Group, which is the UK government's development finance institution. We invest in private sector businesses, so myself moderating this panel hopefully is relevant for the topic of the panel itself. In Myanmar, we've just started investing. We currently have an investment in a telecom tower company, and also we invest indirectly through private equity firms that also invest in local businesses. The topic of the panel is the private sector perspective, and obviously with all the people present in this room who are from private sector, investors from international countries, as well as investors who are already present here, and local investors. So I'm delighted that we have an excellent panel here. We have 4 distinguished individuals who've been present in the country for a long time and doing meaningful investment. So I hope to do them justice and do you justice for sacrificing part of your lunch hour to listen to us. So what we'll do is hopefully have a very lively discussion of all the panelists here sharing their experiences in the country, also sharing their reflections of what the country has gone through, and hopefully also some advice for the country itself to keep attracting foreign investment. What I'd like to do first is for each of the panelists to introduce themselves briefly, also introduce what they're doing in the country, because everybody, as I mentioned, is doing quite significant investments here, and then we'll start a discussion. So I'll just go in sequence. So Vikram, if you won't mind starting, thank you.
Thanks, Thiri. My name is Vikram Kumar. I'm the IFC International Finance Corporation country manager for Myanmar and Thailand. I've lived in Myanmar for over 5 years now, so I can say I'm somewhat knowledgeable about the country. Of course, there's lots to learn, even for somebody like me, and I think the journey is a long one as far as Myanmar is concerned. A lot needs to be done, but I'm very happy to be here. We are today the largest foreign financial investors in the country with a total portfolio of about 1.6 billion. We've had the opportunity to work with government, not just on the investment side through PPPs, but also through advisory operations with many people who are actually in the room, trying to build capacity and to promote private sector development in the country. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Theng Wei, also known as Serge Pan. I'm here today in 2 capacities. One as the Vice Chairman and CEO of the New Yangon City Development Corporation, and also in my own capacity as the Executive Chairman of the Yoma Group. I've been around for a long time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I do think it's time over 12 o'clock, so good afternoon for all the distinguished guests. Thank you for the honorable moderator to give me a chance to participate in the panel. And I'm Yuan Shaobin from China City Group. City Group is the largest state-owned comprehensive company in China, and it is just established from 1979, just by the Chinese as a window of China reforming and opening to the world. So it is already past about 40 years, and the total asset is about $1 trillion. So we are here, just we were awarded as a developer, as a winner of Jopio SEZ developers, the Deep Sea Port and Industry Park. So we hope, day by day, we start our site project. We can create more jobs and to improve all the investments to create more opportunities for all the potential investors. So we do our best. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kunio Negishi. I am a General Manager of Marubeni Corporation Hong Kong branch office. Marubeni is a Japanese trading and investment company. We are operating in Myanmar since 77 years ago. And Marubeni is investing, we are shareholder of Tirao SEZ. Thanks to the environment. Tirao SEZ is quite good, as yesterday State Council told. And also, I'm chairman of Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Myanmar, JCCM. In the year 2011, just 8 years ago, JCCM member was only 52. But this year, members increased to 384 companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists. I feel that this summit has gone very well, and as a closing panel of the summit, I feel very positive that we can discuss about actual investments that are happening in the country. I feel that the government has, with this summit, the creation of the new ministry, and all the messages that have been given by all the excellencies have signaled that indeed Myanmar is open for business. In that, I would like to start just with the opportunities for Myanmar. I think we've talked about the opportunity and potential of this country for quite some time. And there are now investors here on stage that are actually realizing and grabbing those opportunities. So I just want to start with Vikram, because as you mentioned, you've deployed 1.6 billion into the country. All of that, I believe, is into the private sector businesses and also across quite a few different industries. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on your experience so far, how you've seen the country work on this investment, and how you also see your investment portfolio developing.
Thank you. It's an interesting question. When I came in about 5 years back, this was a very different environment, and actually a lot of the people in the room are familiar faces to me. Interestingly, I was scanning the room and I recognized a lot of the culprits. They're still around, which is heartening to see. And for us as a development institution, it's our job to be in markets like Myanmar, which are opening up, which need help. In a perfectly functioning financial sector, market environment, we are not needed. But there was a role we played at that point in time. We invested heavily in the private sector, and IFC naturally, its natural tendency is to work with partners, international firms, bring them to some of the tougher markets, because with capital, with FDI comes expertise, which I think Myanmar needed and still continues to need a lot of today. And that is a strategy that has worked for us in many, many countries across the world. What we try to do different in Myanmar, and which I am personally very excited about and I believe in, is that we wanted to invest in the Myanmar private sector, because we believe if change and capacity development has to be permanent, it has to be the local private sector that has to step up. The local private sector's perception of the risk environment is very different from an international investor. If you're able to support local companies, which is harder to do, for sure, the risk is higher, expertise may not be up to the mark, but what is required is governance. What is required is the willingness to commit to long-term sustainability of not just profitability, but also the environment, the people around them. And I think the choice of investors, I think FMI, Yoma Strategic is one of our clients. CityMart is one of our clients. We have the Shwetong Group, which is a client. OBA, Myanmar OBA. I think the stars of Myanmar's private sector have actually benefited, and we have benefited from a partnership with some of these firms. And I think the idea is to actually take a lot of these groups to the next level, in terms of financial ability, in terms of performance, in terms of integration with the regional champions, because that's the opportunity for Myanmar. The fundamental challenge for Myanmar, and I'm very heartened by His Excellency U Setong's presentation, because that has been the missing link. the ministers, the government, the state councillor, everybody understands the need. The need is investment in infrastructure, which is not just physical infrastructure, it's financial infrastructure, the banking system, and then the human infrastructure, which is the capacity. And laying it out through this project bank mechanism is fabulous. I think it really gives private investors clarity on the roadmap. As he said, the fortune teller part of the business is now taken care of by U Setong's office. So when that has been the joker in the pack, right? All of us know this is a great project, but the devil's in the detail and execution has failed. And that's why if you look at infrastructure investments in Myanmar, over the last few years, they have been declining. If the infrastructure is not there, which again means physical and financial infrastructure, then industry will not come, the local private sector will not develop, jobs will not be created, and it's a vicious cycle. So I think for us, as a development institution, it is not just to promote PPPs. I think PPPs are important, and again, His Excellency mentioned the need for this analysis to determine why PPPs are needed. For me, funding is a part of the story, but a bigger part of the story is what does the private sector bring? Is it improvement in the efficiency? Is it a reduction in cost? And yes, if it does, then a PPP definitely makes sense. And I think he has laid it out very clearly. I'm a big fan of actually having that structure, that mechanism in place. And if we are able to execute on this blueprint, then money will flow. Investors are not concerned about risk. Investors are concerned about structuring in a manner that the adequate risks are transferred to the government and adequate risks are left with the private sector. And striking the right balance for us is very important. I have a $1.6 billion portfolio. I invested in the Myanmar opportunity as IFC. But opportunity is a function of potential and a realization of that potential. I think the potential is obvious. The realization is where a lot of hard work still needs to be done. Thank you.
And we're very grateful that you're paving the way for other private investors to come in as well. So Vikram touched on infrastructure, and that's what I'd like to spend a few moments discussing. And I'd like to turn to you, Mr. Yuan, because you are taking care of a very big infrastructure project, the Chao Phu port, deep sea port, which you bid as a private sector investor. Just curious to know your experience so far on that and what you think something like Chao Phu will bring to the country as well as to yourself as a private investor.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are, as you know, the winner of the Chao Phu RCZ, the developer. So we also, the foreign investor for the infrastructures. I do think, in the past about 4 years, we're discussing with the government, discuss about the commercial models. I do think, I visit, the site, the Chao Phu, there is a lack of infrastructure. So no conditions for private to do more business. So if we finish, the deep sea port, if we improve the infrastructure structures, like we will have the power, we will have the road, we will have the water supply and systems, I do think it will make the Chao Phu areas more attractive for all the private investors. So if to do like this, to realize this, and if we have, the national expressway connected, let's say, connected Chao Phu to Naypyidaw, we will create more jobs for the private investors and also create more jobs. I do think it will be help, the Rokai state to improve. I do think, we need this kind of infrastructure investments. Not more. Now it's this kind of investor too less. So we need more and more. I do think, for as a Myanmar government, also for the communities, do think how to make the whole country welcomed to show the atmosphere to the foreign investor be welcomed. Let them to feel to come here, to invest here, we can make profit. To really realize, the win-win model, I do think while, through our negotiation, we do think we can realize that GeoPio project could be a model as a sector of infrastructure, can be a model of foreign investors' product. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we're really looking forward to the Chaopyu Industrial Zone and the whole special economic zone coming up. And of course, when we think about SEZs, one special economic zone that is already up and running is the Thilawa Special Economic Zone. And Mr. Negishi, you as Marubeni is involved in Thilawa. And I understand that there's more companies coming in. Can you discuss what's made Thilawa successful so far and what's the future for it?
Yeah, right. Thilawa SEZ start operation since 4 years ago, and already 400 hectares Zone A was almost sold out, and Zone B is good sales. It's quite remarkable and quite aggressive speed, and it's a great success, as State Council said. And there is some reasons behind success. There is a reason behind. 3 reasons, I see. At first, location. Thilawa SEZ location is quite good because quite close to the biggest market, Yangon City. And the second one, thanks to the great effort by Myanmar government, there is a one-stop service center. It's quite effective. In order to get permit and license, we don't need to go several places, but just we go to one desk, and everything can be completed. It's perfect operation. But most important thing is a third point, infrastructures, like power, bridge, port, road, waters, everything are being prepared by Japanese ODA money. And it encourages foreign investors to come to Thilawa. And in Thilawa, only 100 companies are coming, and it made a big job creation. And I feel the second wave is coming to Thilawa. First wave was at the time opening, yes. At the time, many foreign companies showed interest into Thilawa. And the Thilawa SEZ was dedicated for the manufacturing. But actually, at that time, because of lack of electricity, many companies opened a factory in Thilawa for just assembling or repacking. But since last year, February, power supply situation greatly improved. That's why right now, many real manufacturing companies are showing interest to enter into Thilawa. Like JFE Steel, they are now making a factory for the galvanized steel plate. So, Thilawa can be a good reference for future success of Myanmar economy, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Negishi. I'd like to turn to Uncle Serge. In your capacity as the CEO of the new Yangon City Development Committee, it's a very bold project by the government, and we saw the presentation yesterday during the Yangon Regional Government session on what the NYDC is planning to achieve. Even phase 1 itself is very large, and I understand this is quite a novel approach by the government. So would love if you can explain to the audience here what the objectives of the NYDC are, and what that also means largely going beyond Yangon to the rest of the country.
Thank you, Thierry. NYDC is significant in a few fronts. The first is the necessity to build a new city in Yangon. I think that necessity has been highlighted in the World Bank report, where by 2030, the population of Yangon will be actually far more than what the current Yangon city can actually accommodate. So there is a real need for Yangon city to expand, to develop. So that's number one. But more important than that, I think the fundamental KPI that has been given to NYDC by the Yangon regional government and by the national government is that New Yangon City is supposed to create 2 million new jobs. Now, this is 2 million new jobs that are not substituting current jobs. These are newly created new jobs. So if you consider the entire population of our employment today in this country that stands at about 7 million, then creating 2 million new jobs is quite a tall order. But if you take a logical approach to analyze this, 2 million jobs actually means, in essence, 1,000 factories, each employing 2,000 workers, and that is 2 million. Okay? If you were to go to South China and count the number of factories that employ more than 2,000 workers, you'll find it in thousands. So to create an industrial manufacturing base consisting of 1,000 factories, each employing 2,000 workers, is not that much of a tall order. The key is whether or not we can provide the environment, the enabling factor for this 1,000 factories to come in. And I am of the view that the first 300 factories will be the challenge. When the first 300 factories move in and start produce, the remaining 700 factories will be gate crashing to come into Myanmar. So it's highly important for us to ensure that the first wave of manufacturing entities to move into this new Yangon city is successful. We happen to be in a very fortunate time. The recent spat between America, the US, and China over trade has sort of propelled a lot of companies in China, manufacturing companies in particular, to quickly go and find alternative destinations in order to avoid becoming the, so to speak, the collateral damage in this trade dispute. Okay? And today, there are only 4 countries in Asia that genuinely qualifies as alternate destinations. These 4 countries happen to be Cambodia, Laos, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Even Vietnam is not in competition with us because the current labor cost in Vietnam has already ascended to a level that is not comparable or competitive. And Vietnam actually has had its great economic boom in the last 5 years. So we are essentially competing with Cambodia, Laos, and Bangladesh. And there's a finite window in terms of timing to enable us to capture this migration of manufacturing facilities. So New Yangon City happens to fall at the right time and the right place with the right plan. The second thing I want to raise is that NYDC is probably the first time the Myanmar government has adopted a different model of how to do a government project. Okay? It is based firmly on the philosophy and the business model of relying on private enterprise. Just to give you some numbers, okay, I would estimate that the initial infrastructure cost to build New Yangon City is approximately $5 billion US. Okay? And yet New Yangon City Development Corporation, NYDC, has a paid-up capital of $7 million. Well, the message is very clear. The government is saying, here's $7 million for you to start it up, and you go and find 4.993 million or billion 4,993 billion somewhere to build a city. It can be done, as we will prove in a matter of weeks, that the first infrastructure project consisting of 6 items costing 1.68 billion will be totally funded by private enterprise. No debts. We're not borrowing a cent. 100% of the money will be equity investment. Right? And that is only the beginning. We still have 6 other major packages where we are negotiating with investors. These 6 packages, namely, which we announced yesterday at the presentation, namely telecommunications or cyber connectivity backbone, public transport, affordable housing, municipal waste treatment, okay? Convention center, okay? All these are part and parcel of the future immediate need of infrastructure building. And they will need a lot more money. But they will all follow the same format of having private equity investors investing in it. So it's a very significant step, and I think it can be done. So I am very bullish about the future. And if I may use this opportunity just to give a 2-minute personal view of what has happened in the last 2 days, I'd like to congratulate UMFCCI for organizing this forum, and I would like to really congratulate our government, which MIC, Ministry of Economic Relationship and Investment, DICA, Ministry of Finance, for all the things we've heard in the last, 2 days. I'm very encouraged. This forum started with a very good opening speech by the State Councillor, who set the right tone. And the speech, all in all, was not only rhetoric, but there was a lot of substance in the speech, a lot of actual action plans, and a lot of directives. The whole day yesterday was followed by 10 pitches from chief ministers, which I thought was fabulous, because for the first time I felt that the mood has sort of changed a bit. The mood has reversed, okay? Right now we have chief ministers coming on the stage to solicit investors to come to their state to invest. In the past, and please don't be offended, many of our high-level ministers sits there and asks you, what do you want? Why are you coming to see me? Well, that's a big difference, isn't it? And that's the change we are looking for. And yesterday we saw that change. So I'm very encouraged, right? This morning in particular, I felt that the 4 speeches were fantastic. The five-star talk by Minister U Thongthern again gave us a reassurance what the country intends to do about real change. Okay? Director General Aung Naing Oo's talk basically highlighted the fact that if we do all the things that is already enshrined in the documents that has been passed as law and regulation, there is no reason we should be at the bottom of the easy to do business index in the world. We should be quite high up there. And of course, the 2 following speeches, I'm very encouraged, and particularly U Aung's speech, there's a real action plan. There's a strategy, there's a roadmap, and there's a goal. All that's great. So I would like to congratulate all of you. Now going forward, however, the challenge is how do we convert all of that into real action, into real results? And I'm going to be brave again to say that probably you will be challenged within a matter of days on your 3-point 5.9, where it says foreign investors, foreign banks are allowed to buy into local banks. Well, we're going to put that to challenge very soon and see how the government reacts, right? There will be many of these points that has been articulated by our ministers in the last 24 hours that will be put to test. And whether it's real or genuine or a lot of rhetoric. I am confident it's real because I'm confident that our ministers are, like us, like the private sector, very much dedicated to make this country better. And that belief, that conviction is what will guarantee us a better future in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle. And that is indeed very positive. And I think for all of us in this room, the conference in the last 2 days has really signaled quite strongly that Myanmar is open for business and welcoming investment. So the sentiment in the country is actually very good. But I do want to touch on the sentiment outside because, as was mentioned this morning, it is the elephant in the room. It is something that should be spoken because especially for those of us who interact with Western investors, the question of Rakhine comes up quite a lot. I don't want to go through the panel just for the interest of time, but in the discussions before this panel, we had quite an in-depth conversation about what Rakhine means and what that does for foreign investment. So actually, I want to turn to you, Mr. Negishi, because I know that Japan has been here for a long time. Yourselves have been here for over 70 years. You haven't wavered. This is obviously a sensitive issue from a humanitarian perspective as well as political perspective. And I understand that Japan has done some, you've had some senior officials come out and go into the conflict areas. Can you just, inform the audience your views on this?
Yes, we understand that there is a strong pressure from international society about Rakhine issues, but let me explain about the situation of Japan. We Japanese companies are still actively working in Myanmar also. Many Japanese companies are trying to enter into Myanmar. No one discouraged about Rakhine issues because of clear opinion of Japanese government. Last year, our Mr. Kono, Minister of Foreign Affairs, he visited Myanmar twice, and one time he visited Rakhine. It is very rare that our foreign minister visit same country twice in a year, except USA. And also he visited Bangladesh also. And by 3 visits to Myanmar and Bangladesh, Japanese government made a clear conclusion that this matter to be settled by 2 countries. International society don't give much pressure on it. It is a clear statement by Japanese government. Then our Japanese companies, we are not discouraged. We are following the Japanese governmental policy. So Japanese government also said, we will be together with Myanmar people. We will support development of this country. So our activity in this country is just in line with intention of Japanese government. That's why we are freely working here. Okay. That's right. But anyway, this matter to be settled. And the next month, there is a seminar or a business seminar in Rakhine State will be held. And the Japanese JICA, JETRO is supporting such activities. I think everybody will join at the Gapari Beach to enjoy not only the beach, but also the business discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to turn to you again, Uncle Serge, but your different hat on. So as the chairman of a number of successful conglomerates here, you're listed as a Myanmar-operated business on both the main board of the Singapore Stock Exchange, and Memories listed on the second board, and you have just successfully raised debt financing as well through the Thai Stock Exchange. And in that, I know that you have quite high caliber, quality global investors invested in in both the stocks and the debt. So you've had many, many ratios talking about Myanmar, promoting Myanmar, not just Rakhine, but just in general. What do you tell the investors about the potential of Myanmar?
Well, we have been listed in the Singapore main board now for 12 years. And we have been recently listed on the Catalyst board for just 1 year. Also, we've been on the Yangon Stock Exchange for the last 3 years. But the recent Thai bond that we successfully did in Thailand was indeed a great milestone of which we're very proud of. First, the Thai Ministry of Finance only approved 4 foreign companies for the first time to raise Thai baht denominated bonds. Okay? And of the 4 companies that were approved, the other 3 were basically sovereign funds, Bank of Malaysia, etc. It was only Yoma Strategic that was a purely private company that was one of the 4. Plus the fact that it was a company that was more or less 100% focused on Myanmar, with Myanmar activities. So this is a breakthrough, and we are very happy about that. The second thing is that we received a AAA rating, which is, for people who know the bond market, it is not an easy rating to achieve. It's a AAA rating, which means it's a very good bond. Thirdly, it's a fully guaranteed bond, and we were 2.5 times oversubscribed by institutional investors. So I'm extremely elated about all this happening. Coming back, therefore, to Rakhine, I just want to say, that I'm very appreciative of what the Japanese government attitude is. I'm sure the Chinese government is the same. But my view is that the West and the East have 2 different lenses when the issue of Rakhine comes up. To the West, Rakhine equals Myanmar, Myanmar equals Rakhine, and there's nothing else. Well, I think that's not very accurate. Whereas the East has another lens, and that is Rakhine is a problem, but Rakhine is a small part of Myanmar, and there is still Myanmar left. And we should engage and not isolate. We should help and not punish. So because of these 2 fundamental differences in perspective, okay, I feel that the Rakhine issue, although it is an issue, is not going to be a main hindrance to our development. Okay? It is going to be an issue that will solve in its good time. It is not going to be an issue that's going to be solved overnight. And any government, any political party, any international organization that thinks they are smart enough to solve this problem, I think is bullshitting. It cannot be solved overnight. It's a historical problem, a complex problem. So we will all continue to live, prosper, develop, advance, and hopefully in that progress, what the government is trying to do and what the speakers have articulated about the fact that we need to develop Rakhine, we need to give them a better life, is the answer. And I'm very glad that there are so many people around the world trying to support that. So in a way, I'm disheartened about some of the Western rhetoric about thinking that Rakhine represents Myanmar, and because of this issue, Myanmar can be written off. That is really, really bad political judgment.
Thank you, Uncle. Mr. Yuan, I know we talked about that, so I won't focus on Rakhine anymore because I know that we've talked about that, your view that it's actually a development issue. And if you give development, the social benefits will also come and it will be helpful. But I want to talk a little bit about the enabling environment for investment in the country. You are managing a very large project. Obviously, the country is changing and developing, and there's some teething pains. But can you share a little bit about, also as an experience of China, CITIC itself has been around for a long time, and China has done such a miraculous growth over the last 30, 40 years, and have done so in a way that encouraged innovation and obviously bringing enormous benefits to the people. So what would you advise our government in terms of creating enabling environment for business? And from the lessons that you've learned from your own country, as well as your company investing in other countries like Myanmar around the world?
I do think, I express my opinion not on behalf of my government. I just do think, for Rokai issue, it is, Myanmar's legacy. It's a legacy. Maybe I cannot say it's good or bad, but anyway, it is a legacy. It's belong to Myanmar. So I do think, it's happened. It could be solved inside, I do think, the politicians of Myanmar can solve all this. And also it is, happened when, the Myanmar will develop. I do think, while, the Rakhine state could be developed very fast, create the jobs, and the people's life will be raised, and this kind of situation could be easily solved to create more jobs. Maybe we need some more people to move into Rakhine. So now it is just due to lack of opportunities, lack of jobs. So if later, if we have more and more investors, if we create more and more jobs, opportunities, if the lives is raised, I do think, it is during the development period, it will be solved. It is a key point, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to talk, since we have quite a few Myanmar investors here, Myanmar business people here, there's sometimes a bit of a misconception about what foreign direct investment means, foreigners coming into the country, and what that might mean to the country, what that might mean to local businesses. So as foreign investors, actually, I'll open the floor up to anybody who wants to answer. I believe that is a misconception. And what is your view, and how would you address concerns by local businesses and the government that foreigners coming in might not be a good thing?
I agree with you, Thierry. I think FDI is essential. And why? In my mind, FDI, the definition of FDI, it's long-term, right? It's not money that's coming in and will leave the country tomorrow. We're looking at 7-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year kind of investments by investors who are making choices about, do I invest in Vietnam, do I invest in Thailand, do I invest in Myanmar, as Serge mentioned earlier. And it is the responsibility, in my view, of the government to direct the investment. Direct the FDI into sectors where you believe there is a gap. And if there is no perception of a gap in certain sectors and the domestic private sector is strong enough to meet the needs of the consumer, fine. You need to protect the domestic market, you can make choices. But I think in certain areas, the volume of investment is so huge that without FDI, infrastructure investments cannot happen. Now, if you look at power, for example, and I keep coming back to infrastructure because that's one sector, to be honest, and I may be stirring a hornet's nest, I have seen very little progress in the country. Whether it's the energy sector, the cash flows in the energy sector, or investment in additional megawatts of generation, or improvement in distribution, the progress has been very, very slow. And that doesn't create an opportunity for the 1,000 factories that Serge wants to bring in, because without power, there will be no factories, there will be nothing. And I think it's a responsibility of the government to sit back and say, okay, what do we need to make this a success? Yes, it's investment in electricity, that's very clear, but why is that being held up? Why can this government not progress on electricity? The issue is bankable projects, right? Why are we not able to structure bankable projects in the electricity sector? Why are we going out with, in my view, random projects? There is a lot of advice that a lot of the bilaterals and multilaterals have given to the government of Myanmar, and I think it's about time that, as His Excellency U Setong mentioned, a view is taken that, okay, these are the 3-4 key projects that they believe are important. Let's structure fair concessions. Let's do competitive procurement. Let's make these projects happen. But without that kind of commitment and focus, I'm concerned, we'll have the same discussion 3 years down the road, and we would not have moved the needle. The needle will come from infrastructure, and infrastructure can come from FDI, but can also come from the domestic private sector.
Well, my own comments on FDI, let's simplify it by saying there are many types of FDI. The FDI that comes into the private sector to do businesses, to build hotels, to build factories, are not the FDI that I want to comment on. I think that's perfectly fine. The Myanmar Investment Law, the Myanmar Companies Act take care of all of that. The FDI that is contentious today actually relates to FDI in infrastructure. That is where the most contention is. Okay? There are two things to think about. One, infrastructure investments are massive in capital by nature. You cannot build a road from Muse to Yangon with $20 million, okay? You probably have to think in terms of $20 billion. So it's massive in nature. Secondly, it doesn't pay back fast enough. And that's typical of a lot of infrastructure projects. It takes a long time to pay back. So with these two factors, it is normally quite difficult to find willing and ready investors. Okay. Now, most countries will have enough money to do less commercially viable infrastructure projects themselves and allow private sector to participate in more profitable, more bankable infrastructure projects. But the third factor that we suffer is that we don't have enough money to do it ourselves. We do not have enough reserves. We do not have enough, simply, we're not rich enough to pay $20 billion to build a road ourselves. And therefore, we are forced to take on FDI. And that's where a lot of the contentious argument arises. Are we selling off our sovereign rights? Are we giving away a lot of things? Are we getting the short end of the stick, etc., etc., etc.? Well, let me just express that in my own feeling. To those who feel that way, I just have a question, what I call an acid test. Is the infrastructure, or are the infrastructure projects that is in discussion something that the investor can fold it, put it in a suitcase and take away? If it cannot be done so, and if it's going to stay in our country to be used by our people, the whole situation should take a different look, right? At the end of the day, who is going to be the major beneficiary of this infrastructure project? That should be the key of consideration. Not how much who gets what, but how much who benefits most. So I hope this simple acid test of whether or not somebody can fold it up, out, put in a suitcase, and take it away should become one of the criteria. The rest is all commercial common sense. The days are gone when people come and exploit other people. The days are gone when countries do quite difficult to understand things for political reasons. By that I mean, there is a time when China spent a lot of money in the continent of Africa for political reasons. There's a time when United States spent a lot of money shoring up dictators all over the world to protect their political interests. These were all motivated by politics. Today, the major motivation is commerce, commercial. And if it's not viable, no one's going to invest. So with that, I would end my view on FDI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle. I wish that we can keep on talking because at least I'm learning a lot and I'm sure all of you are as well. But our time has come to an end. But I would like to ask each of our panelists in no particular order. So whenever you feel ready, please could you conclude by doing two things. One is advice to the government. What would you advise our government to do to make the investment environment better and indeed to help the economy and the people? And two is your advice to other investors. It could be anything, where would you invest, what your experience has been and what they should do. I always feel that this country, the exciting thing for me about Myanmar is that you can still be number one in any sector if you wanted to, because we still have that opportunity available to everybody. So whoever feels ready, please jump in, advice to government and advice to other investors.
Okay, at first, advice to government. Mr. Siang has gone. I wanted to tell him, but anyway. To the government, at first, I'd like to appreciate very much government's strong intention to increase FDI during the various measures like company law, it is relax the consumer or wholesale industry to foreign. But still, further effort is needed. And as Mr. Kumar said, that lack of infrastructure is quite key. Today, I talked with one of Japanese company who is thinking about a big investment into Myanmar. But he said, there is a problem, lack of electricity and water. So infrastructure is quite needed, and it should be prepared as soon as possible. And today, I was very encouraged by the statement by Mr. Siam that he said that for the PPP, infrastructure PPP, risk to be shared between private sector and the government, it is quite important. So please do such a way together. This is the first message to the government. And my message to other foreign investors, potential foreign investors, I checked the macroeconomic data of the growth of this country, especially after 2011, after recession of the country. And I compare the growth rate with other countries like Vietnam or China or Cambodia. And the growing speed is okay, even though those 2 years economic growth is rather slow down, but still Myanmar is growing quite nicely. Like Vietnamese improvement after Doi Moi. And looking at the other countries' growing ratio, starting from the year zero as a recession, at first 8 to 10 years, growing speed is rather slow. But after that, it jumped up. So I hope Myanmar is on the way to just before landing. So after 3 or 5 years later, Myanmar economy will sharply grow up. That's what I believe in. That's why my message to foreign potential investors is come now and be prepared for a big explosion of Myanmar economy. Thank you.
So I do think, I agree with Ms. Pan's, opinions. So I do think, for some countries, we need FDI. So we are FDI, we are here. We just, we are facing, I just want to tell some experience. We're facing some of the opinions from the communities that it is a Chinese product. It is not Myanmar's product. Indeed, what we built the deep sea port and the industry park, it is Myanmar product. It is Myanmar's deep sea port. It will be served for about 2/3 of Myanmar. You just study on the map, you will find it can cover nearly 60, the service can cover whole the countries. It is really Myanmar's product. Of course, just as the investment come from China. Don't worry about this. Of course, it is investments, it is business. And I do think if the communities, the peoples, and also the medias can be guided by the government, it will be create maybe more welcomed environment for the investment. So I do think if we can cooperate, we can guide the peoples to think, follow the international ways. So to make it really win-win business. And also, I do think, we are not wrong decision to invest here, to make the decision to come here, because, first, Myanmar in the past about more than half centuries, it is not developed. Now the new government will reform the whole country. We do think it is a huge opportunity for the foreign investor to be here to make money, to get more benefit, but try to balance all the requirements from the people, the government, and the investors themselves. And I do think, very, very happy to get a sign from the speech of Her Excellency Daw Aung San Suu Kyi's speech that, now the government change to focus on to attracting more foreign investors. Okay, so we are happy. We're already here. We're already here. We will be grasp the chance to start our business, to in the same times, to make money for as investor, same time to improve, to do some beneficial for the local people, local government, and the government of the country. This is our some advice. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll let Serge have the last word. For the government, number one, please focus on specific power projects and help conclude the discussions on these PPAs in a fair manner. Number two, let's pass the insolvency law, because that's a very, very important indicator for doing business for Myanmar. It sends a signal to the world, it sends a signal to the local private sector. And number three, YCDC actually can make a huge difference to the doing business rankings also by just publishing basic services, charges, fees, and everything on their website. So I am being very specific: power projects, insolvency law, transparency around fees and services for land registration and construction permits. And I really want to thank the counterparts on the government side. The DG DICA is here to push us so far, but we now need the support of the parliament and the state councillor and the leadership of this country to make these key things happen. Thank you. The private sector, please come and talk to us.
My closing comments, I just want to pour some cold water. We've had a great 2 days. We're all excited, and it's time perhaps to get a little bit of a cold shower. So my only hope or advice is that we have to realize that what we intend and we hope for and what will actually happen on the ground, the reality, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap. If you don't believe, you try it tomorrow, says, I just heard the Aung San Suu Kyi say this and this at the Invest Myanmar Forum day before yesterday, and U Thant Thun said this and this morning. Try tomorrow to go to a ministry and say, I want to do exactly what they said. And your answer will be, Maya Wutine. Right? I don't think it will happen. You have to expect that. Okay? Before, it used to be Mayabu. Now it's Mayabu Tine. Then it will become Sinzaji Lai Me. We'll think about it. And then it will become Chozaji Me. And one day it will happen. So I would like to say, please don't lose hope. Keep trying. Be patient. It will get there. Thank you.
I think that's a great conclusion. Thank you very much to all the panelists, not just for your comments, but really believing in and investing in Myanmar. Just a housekeeping note that for the media, there will be a press conference immediately after this in the media room. And I'd just like to conclude by warming things up a little bit and reiterating all the Excellency's remarks in the last 2 days. It's time to invest in Myanmar. Thank you.